Joining me now to preview this weekend's game between Jacksonville and Tennessee is Mike DiRocco of ESPN. Mike, thanks so much for being with me and taking a couple minutes here. I appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. How's everyone doing today?
Everybody's doing well. I don't know how we can start a conversation about the weekend without kind of briefly touching on the main story that's captivated the NFL and really the greater sports landscape, which is the health of Damar Hamlin. I'm curious, some encouraging news from the Buffalo Bills organization today that he's made market improvements. We still don't know exactly what that means, but it's good news rather than bad. I'm just curious, Mike, what has the reaction been like from what you can tell in Jacksonville to his injury, the NFL's response? And one of the things that I've been really thinking about is just how triggering this has been for current NFL players and former NFL players as, memories come flooding back of teammates that have been injured or worse. It seems to have been a very traumatic event for not only the Bills and the Bengals, but the collective NFL community at large.
Yeah, absolutely. And a big reason for that is, here in Jacksonville, for example, there's nobody here that played with him, no one here that went to college with him. But in a sense, they're teammates anyway, because they're all part of the brotherhood of playing in the NFL. So it hits them pretty hard, just as, everyone would expect that it would. And, the guys that we spoke with in the locker room were pretty much to a man were like, look, it's prayers up for his family. We're hoping everything's working out. We're just as appalled by everybody else at what happened. But the most important thing for anyone that's dealing with this, outside of his family, of course, is making sure that they take care of themselves mentally and make sure their mental health is okay. And they talk to some people if they need to. And I know here at the Jaguars, they've, really made an emphasis of making sure that the guys here know, hey, look, if you need to talk to someone, we will get you in touch with people. We will get you a mental health counselor or whatever help you need to kind of get through this. And there is the expectation that guys are shaken by this for sure. It's not like teams are sitting there going, well, it happened all the way over there. These guys aren't going to be impacted by it. But so far, it seems like here in Jacksonville, everybody is handling it pretty well at this point. And obviously, as we get more encouraging news, guys feel better about it.
And I know we're still up in the air as far as what the league is going to do with that game and how that affects the playoffs moving forward. But from what you can tell in Jacksonville, there's been no indication that things won't proceed as planned as it relates to this weekend's game between Jacksonville and Tennessee or the other games that are on the schedule.
Yeah, I spoke with the player rep, the NFLPA player rep here, and he told me he's heard no issues or no talk or anything about potentially not playing games this week. And this was the other day. So obviously with the more encouraging news coming out recently, I don't think that there's going to be any kind of a cry from the players not to play or anything like that.
Good news, I guess, that, the league is going to move forward with some of these other games that are on the schedule, Mike. And as it relates to Jacksonville and Tennessee specifically, talk to me about this turnaround that we've seen from the Jaguars in the second half of the season. What do you think has ultimately been the difference for them over the last, say, 5 games?
Well, number one, it's the play of Trevor Lawrence. He's since November started, he leads the league in completion percentage. He's the second highest rated passer, 14 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, just like 2,100 yards. He's been every bit the franchise quarterback that they expected when he was taken number 1 overall in 2021. So what caused that flip? Well, it was his poor performance against Denver in London. And, he threw an interception in the end zone. The second time he had done that this year on the same play, did it earlier in the year against the Texans. And then the last throw he made was, they had the ball, 2-minute drill. They could have, maybe won the game. And he throws a bad pass on an out to Christian Kirk, and that gets intercepted. And he says, look, in that locker room, I didn't want to feel like that anymore. I need to turn things up. I need to start being the player I know I am. And since then, he's been fantastic. He's played like a top 5 NFL quarterback. And, when you've got that, then you're always going to be in games. And they've made some really good clutch plays. He throws a game-winning touchdown pass and 2-point conversion to beat the Ravens, right, with like 14 seconds left. He's leading the team back from a 17-point deficit to the Oakland or the Las Vegas Raiders. And then in Dallas, he turns the ball over with like a minute to go. They get it back. He drives them in position for a field goal. They win in overtime. So that's probably been the biggest reason for the turnaround without question.
Interesting to hear your insight on what the catalyst was for sort of this change. But it seems like overall, from last season to this season, he just, for a more simplistic way of describing it, I guess, I mean, he just looks more like an NFL quarterback. And we've seen these comparisons to Zach Wilson or guys who haven't really panned out or met expectations. And now you see Trevor Lawrence in the last handful of games, second half of this season, what have you, really start to look the part. I mean, is that the consensus in Jacksonville, that maybe after a little bit more of a learning curve than some might have expected, that he has finally stepped into and embraced this role at this level?
Oh, yeah, without question. And you know, look, 2021, his rookie year, was a mess with Urban Meyer. You know, it's hard enough to transition from college to the NFL at that position, which everyone, you know, it's the hardest position in sports, being a quarterback on an NFL team, you know, without all the stuff that's going on, you know, in the background with Urban Meyer and yelling at assistants and the atmosphere in the building. So he gets Doug Pederson, who's a former NFL quarterback, obviously. He gets a staff that's got, you know, Jim Bob Cooter is a former college quarterback. Press Taylor is a former college quarterback. Mike McCoy, I believe, played in the NFL as a quarterback for a little bit. And obviously Doug Pederson, a former NFL quarterback. So you've got all those guys working with him. He really likes the offensive system that Doug Pederson's running. And as the season got on, he got more comfortable with it. And as you get more comfortable with it, you start playing better. And that's why he looks like the NFL, you know, a top 5 quarterback in the NFL right now. And in Jacksonville, the feeling is, okay, we're set now because we've got the quarterback and we've got the head coach, which are the two most important pieces. And now let's start making some of these playoff runs that are going to be, you know, what defines this franchise over the next decade.
Outside of making Trevor Lawrence feel comfortable, putting together a system that fits his style, where else has Doug Pederson's impact been felt?
Well, one of the first things he said when he got here was like, these guys need to heal from the Urban Meyer episode. Like, guys were not happy. The atmosphere in the locker room was terrible. There was a level of mistrust. There was a level of, you know, I don't want to say not caring, but man, I think we've all at any point in our lives have had a job that we hated. So if we can remember what it was like to go to that job that we hated, I mean, you're unhappy, you're not doing your best. It's just a bad atmosphere. And I think that's the situation they were all in last year. And Pederson has sort of turned around, won their trust, you know, got them to understand, hey, look, what you guys experienced last year is not the way it's supposed to be. That's not what it's like in the NFL. So he turns that whole atmosphere and culture around. And, you know, he has the instant credibility of having won a Super Bowl. So you add all that in together, and then you have a complete buy-in relatively early in the process, maybe even earlier than a lot of people anticipated. And that's why they sort of stayed together despite the 5-game losing streak in October, and despite losing all those one-score games. So that culture has really been as big a part of the turnaround as Trevor Lawrence's play.
Also having a running back in the fold that I think can contribute and provide support, I imagine has gone a long way to help Trevor Lawrence in terms of balancing this offense. Can you talk about that just a little bit? Travis Etienne's sort of impact, the significance of having him back?
Yeah, without question. He missed that first year, obviously, with a Liz Frank injury. And they kind of eased him into the rotation, I guess, a little bit at the beginning of the year with James Robinson being around. But once they decided James Robinson wasn't the guy and we're going to trade him, you know, Travis Etienne really has taken off. And he's a 1,000-yard rusher here in essentially his first year in the NFL. And he gives them that speed element that James Robinson really didn't give them. I think he just went, 68 yards on a touchdown run off tackle last week against the Texans. He's a factor in the pass game. And that familiarity with him, because he played with Trevor, obviously, at Clemson, helps out as well. But this offense is a complete offense. They can run it. They can throw it. They've got weapons outside with Kirk and Zay Jones. They've got a guy inside and Evan Ingram, who at tight end, who they're able to move around to. And then you add Travis Etienne there, that run game explosive element to that, and you've got an offense that could be, once really they add maybe a couple of more pieces, one of the best in the NFL.
Yeah, how far away are they offensively? How many pieces are they away from really being one of the preeminent, more balanced offenses in the league?
Well, I think, next year Calvin Ridley's coming in. They completed the trade for Calvin Ridley. So that'll be a huge piece. That gives them really an outside guy on the edge that can really stretch the field. Christian Kirk is probably at his best in the slot. And they've used him there, but they've also had to use him outside a little bit this year too. So I think once you get Calvin Ridley in the fold next year, then you can kind of keep Kirk in the slot more. That gives you a lot more flexibility. Probably need to add another back, a running back that they can really kind of contribute a little bit more behind ETN. And they got to figure out what they're going to do at tight end, because Evan Ingram signed a 1-year deal. They want to bring him back. He wants to come back. You got to find a way to make that work. But they also need to add maybe another tight end to that mix as well. But, the offensive line is playing pretty well, and all those guys are going to be coming back. So it looks like the Ridley piece is huge. And if they can do some of those other things, then, they've got a chance to be every bit as potent as any other offense in the league.
And when you think about this meeting with Tennessee, how similar do you expect the game plan to be when they played them not that long ago? I mean, do you expect to see sort of a similar plan of attack in this matchup?
Yeah, I think the last time they played, they wanted to run the ball a little bit more, but they weren't able to. They weren't able to run it as effectively as they thought they would be. So they ended up obviously having to go and ride Trevor Lawrence a little bit more. I think they're still going to try and attack the same way. I think they want to run the ball here, but they're going to be able to make some plays downfield. I think they can take advantage of the back end of that Titans secondary. So I think we'll see them go down the field a little bit more maybe than even we saw the first week or the first meeting. But, look, the bottom line is they got to stop Derrick Henry. So whatever they do on offense is sort of secondary almost to Derrick Henry, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and easier said than done, I guess. If they have a shot at that, who will the onus fall on to really step up?
Well, I mean, it's got to be the linebackers, to be honest with you. It's got to be Foye Oluokun, who's the middle linebacker who's leading the NFL in tackles. It's got to be Devin Lloyd and Chad Muma on the outside. And I tell you, there's a guy, Shaq Quarterman, a backup linebacker, was in the game and made probably one of the 2 or 3 most important plays of the season in the last game against Tennessee when he hit Derrick Henry and forced a fumble. The Jaguars took that fumble. I think they were down 14-13 at the time. They took the ball, went down the field, scored, and never trailed again. So that moment right there was sort of the turning point in that game. And that was the first game in their current 4-game win streak. So those linebackers are going to have to be really, really active. And the key with Derrick Henry is they try to get him outside and get him in on safeties and corners and make them tackle him, because no one wants to tackle Derrick Henry at 240 pounds. I mean, it's not ideal. So those linebackers have to be really active and get over there and gang tackle that kid, because if not, and you let him get going, it can be a long, long day.
And in your mind, is that sort of the X factor? Could that be the difference in this game, is whether or not they're able to contain him?
Yeah, because Treylon Burks, their receiver, their number 1 receiver, has got a groin injury, and a groin injury to a receiver is a massive problem. Josh Dobbs is making just his second start. He probably gives the Titans a better chance to win than Malik Willis does. But again, he's an inexperienced quarterback. He's not a guy that's really going to, throw the ball down the field a lot and challenge your guys there. So I think if you can kind of control Derrick Henry, if you're the Jaguars, you can kind of control him. You're not going to stop him, but you got to keep him from really doing a ton of damage. Then I think, you do that, then, you're just efficient on offense and you should be able to win this game.
We talked about the run game a little bit. Tennessee, I would imagine their pass defense is a little bit porous just because of what we've seen. I mean, when you look at the Jaguars receiving core, is there a receiver that is not on the radar or that's flying under the radar that you think might be a difference maker this weekend?
Oh, boy. No, I don't think so. I mean, because they've all taken turns sort of having big days. Like Zay Jones had a 3 or 2 touchdown game not too long ago. Evan Ingram had a massive game in the first meeting against the Titans. If there's a guy to maybe point to, I would probably point to Ingram again, I guess. Because the Jaguars move him around a lot, and he can line up outside, he can line up in the slot, and he can line up right along the offensive line as well. So I would think that they're going to try and do some of the same things that they did with him and get him moving, get a matchup issue with him, because he is a problem for linebackers to stay with. So I think that if we're trying to find a guy that might have a really big game, I would probably point to Ingram.
I'd imagine that this is a winnable game for Jacksonville. I mean, how would you sort of handicap this? Do you expect them to? I haven't looked at the line. I don't know if they're favored in this game or not, but would you expect them to win this weekend?
Yeah, I think at one point there were 6.5-point favorites. Doug Pederson, especially in the last 6 weeks, has gotten this franchise to the point, or this team to the point right now, where they're rarely going to lose games to teams that they are markedly better than. And I was wondering if that was going to be the case. They played the Jets and the Texans in the last 2 weeks, and they played the Jets with Zach Wilson, who was just awful in that game. But that was the thing to me, like, okay, can you start beating those teams that you're supposed to beat, that you're much better than, and do it on a much more regular basis than they have in the past? And to be honest with you, they weren't really better than a lot of teams in the past. But the way they handled the Texans and the Jets, gave up 3 points in each game, that shows me that they're rolling at this point, and they understand, look, we have to take care of business against the teams that we're better than. And I think they are better than the Titans, and I think they win this game. I think they cover, I think they win by 10 or more points, and this might be the sign to the rest of the division that, hey, the balance of power has shifted. It's not in Tennessee anymore. It's here in Jacksonville.
Just that in and of itself, that this team that started out so abysmally and, of course, had just a complete dumpster fire of a season under Urban Meyer, is now in a position with Doug Pederson that they can win the games that they're expected to win. I mean, just that alone, should that be enough for Jacksonville fans to go, okay, you know what? Like, we'll take it no matter what happens moving forward in the season. I hate to put it that way, Mike, but I mean, with the bottom being so low, to get to this point where if they're expected to win, they're going to win. I imagine that that's something of a victory this season.
Yeah. Jaguar fans used to say, and I interact with them on social media and around town all the time. Their thing used to be, hey, look, just get us to the point where we're playing meaningful football in December, because normally they're usually eliminated for all intents and purposes from the playoffs before most of us even buy Halloween candy. You know what I mean? It's really been September and then into October, and then the season's over and it's time to start talking about the draft. So, the fact that they're playing a game, the final game of the regular season, with a chance to go to the playoffs, that is significant progress here. And yeah, if they lose this game, people around here are going to be very disappointed. It'll sting for a while. But the bottom line is, I think everyone around here also realizes that, okay, we made significant progress this year. We have the two most important pieces in the coach and the quarterback. We're going to be a factor in the AFC relatively soon. And there is no way that the arrow is not pointing up on this franchise.
Just before I let you go, I wonder, the NFL fans on Twitter, like you said, they always have something to say. And I'm curious if you have an opinion about where this game is placed, because Jacksonville will be on much shorter rest than Tennessee. If there's another X factor out here, I mean, the Titans have 10 days in between games where Jacksonville's up against it a little bit. Is it fair or unfair, Saturday versus Sunday, or figuring out the scheduling of all this?
Either way, there's always a team that feels like, we got, the job a little bit right there. We didn't get a fair shake on something like this. The Jags, yeah, it's a short week. And then you also look in the factor that the Titans rested a bunch of guys against the Cowboys the last time they played. But it's helped by the fact that they are playing at home. You don't have to get on a plane and go. So that does help them a little bit. And honestly, sometimes when you're rolling and you have momentum, it's sometimes better to keep going. You know what I mean? Keep playing. So they can look at it as, look, we already did something like this. We won 3 games in 12 or 14 days when they had a Thursday night game earlier in the season. So look, fans aren't happy with it. They love the fact that it's prime time because the Jags are never in prime time. And there are some fans that are also, they're unhappy that it's the short notice. But, I don't think the players care about it. Doug Pederson doesn't care about it. And like I said, their thing is, hey, look, we're playing at home, so that should help us. We'll have the home crowd, and it's going to be a fun game, and I'm looking forward to it more than I've looked forward to a game around here in a long time.
I was going to say one that Jaguars fans definitely deserve after the recent stretch. Mike DiRocco of ESPN, thank you so much for the insight.
No problem. Thanks for having me.